So I'm so excited that you're on our podcast today, Deb.
Excited to be here, Anna-Lynn.
Liar. But I appreciate the lie.
We're just talking, right?
It's true. No pressure.
We're just
going to have
talking.
a conversation. And Deb is on our analytics team. She does a really great job with that. So we're going to talk a little bit about what she does. And yeah, we're gonna free dive it, baby.
Sounds good.
No pressure. So why don't we start by telling us a little bit about what you do here at Seapoint?
What do I do?
Besides filling our days with sunshine and joy.
And this is why I love working here.
It's a total love fest. It is.
It's so good for the ego. I work, like you mentioned, on the analytics team. So I work primarily for one particular client that involves a lot of watching, let's say. So doing the weekly analytics for them, looking at the numbers from the Google ads and emails and the various marketing campaigns that we have going for them, and taking that information and seeing what we need to do different from a creative standpoint and things like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the usefulness of analytics can't be overstated because it really does inform, like, as the creative director here, like, our team relies heavily on your team. So between our teams, like, creative team really relies heavily on what you do because we need to be able to create content that is going to be useful to our client. So what are some of the analytics and metrics that you look at to help inform my team?
So one of the things that pops to mind that we do a lot looking is like with blogs and emails and stuff like that. So looking at open rates, click-through rates. So like, are people connecting with a subject line? Do they find something that makes them want to open and read this? Because people get I get so many emails, and so many times it's like, oh, I subscribe to this, but I'm like, nope, I don't have time for this. Delete, delete, delete. But if something, if a subject line catches your eye, it's like, oh, what's this about? So that's a big number that we look at. And then once they're in there, did they take any kind of action? Is another important thing. Like, did you deliver? You can't just have a clickbait style subject line. Right.
Some do.
Exactly. Some do. And that frustrates people over time, and they're not going to stay subscribed to your information. And without looking at that, you're creating content in a bubble. You know, it's like you need that feedback. You need to, the whole point is to get people interested in what you're putting out there. And if they're showing you by the numbers that they're not interested or that they are, that then informs your next decision.
I know when I was first starting out here, I started out as a writer before. It was a while before I became creative director, but when I started, I would sit down on these meetings and I would kind of just zone out during the status call, like during the analytics and the metrics, because I'm like, I don't really need to hear about that. I just need to know, I just need to read my blog at this meeting. I need to, present my part. I'll listen in on the writing bits, but the rest of it, it was like a foreign language. I don't really need to pay attention to it. It's just noise in my ear. But I've so come to appreciate, it didn't take me long to realize, whoa, this is really important for me to know. And I think sometimes there's a disconnect, not just because I experienced it personally, but I think some creative teams think that analytics is completely separate from what they do. And that can be easy to kind of think like, well, this team is taking care of the metrics. I'm taking care of the content. We're on different sides of the table. When really there has to be that I hate the word synergy, but there has to be like it's just such a bougie word that's overused. But it
there's
is
a
like
connection.
there's
Like
a
there
connection
has to
there.
be
It has to
a
be,
connection.
it has to be that both teams are working very closely together, I think, in order for it to be truly successful and
Right.
have those big gains for their client and the big results.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're kind of just off in your own little bubble.
Right, right. And what's the point of creating content that no one's reading and you don't know
Right.
what's...
Your teams have to work together. There has to be good
Yeah.
communication. There has to be good
Yeah.
flow of ideas and flow of information
Yeah.
back and forth.
And it's funny, it just made me think, we were talking earlier, myself and one of the other members of the analytics team also have done some creative work,
Yeah.
not here
Yeah.
or elsewhere. And that kind of helps us in how we look at things. And then I don't know if this is like in communicating that with the creative team, like,
Yeah.
hey, like we might notice things, like
Yeah.
being able to have an understanding, at least a basic understanding
Yeah.
of both. And even for you, like what numbers matter to what based on what I'm doing. Like there are some
Right.
things that aren't.
Right. There's some stuff that still is like, yeah, okay.
Google can be Google and stuff can
Right.
change. You know, like there's things that are out of your control, but there is a lot that the numbers can tell you if you know what to look for.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes I'll go on like tangents of digging, like, what does this mean? And like dig, and I might find nothing. I'm like, oh, I just wasted an hour. But sometimes, like I discovered in February, we had a special campaign that they run every February for a specific product. And there was a phrase that I found every email that had this phrase in the subject line got a better open rate
Yeah.
than the ones that didn't.
Which is important for my team to know.
Right. And it's funny because I remember when we worked on this campaign last year, we were like, how can we say this differently?
Yes.
And we kept trying to come up
I remember
with
that. Yep.
different ways to say it.
Yeah.
And they didn't get opened as much as any time we have used. It's like, well, it's like, and
Don't don't fix what's not broken.
right.
kind
But
of
sometimes you
mentality.
don't know
Right.
until you try it.
Exactly.
Because to some other, like to a different demographic, we just ran into this also recently. Different demographic, different product, same phrase did worse.
Yeah.
Because they were more skeptical
Yeah.
of it. So it's like looking for those little things.
Yeah.
Who are you talking to? What's their age? Like those are all pieces of a puzzle, and it really takes time, which is hard if you're like a solo entrepreneur trying to do stuff on yourself, you know, like being able to, but it really matters because you're going to waste time otherwise,
Do you have favorite tools to do these analytics? Like I think there's some pretty common ones out there that most people use, but are there advantages to the tools that you like in particular, or?
Yeah, so I love a good spreadsheet. I'm sorry. I don't love it. I have a love-hate
of my existence.
I have a love-hate relationship with that. But it's because like I can understand it. And they're like we use HubSpot for our email marketing. So using the tools that are within there is great. We use Salesforce for one client. So and that is a little more involved. Like I can find some stuff, but that one's a little bit more challenging for me. Like it's more to get the information that I then put in a spreadsheet. Yeah. Basically I have, my 20 tabs is all different spreadsheets with the information compiled in different ways.
Yeah.
So I'm old school like that, I guess.
Hey, if it works.
And we're experimenting with some different programs like Hotjar, where you can kind of see where people are clicking and what their patterns are when they're on a page. Like that's all very interesting information and might indicate something new that you're, it's just all data points.
Yeah.
It's all data points to see what jumps out at you. Like what are the habits of the people that are consuming what you're putting out.
Yeah.
But I'm, good old spreadsheet. I know how they work. I know how to get them to do what I need it to do.
And to me, spreadsheets feel like math, which breaks my brain. Like,
But it does the math for you.
I know, I look at them and it seriously is like I'm trying to read a foreign language. It just, it's overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
Whenever I look at them, I'm getting better. Like since I've been here, I'm like, I am not going to let this beat me. I'm going to learn. And I'm gonna get to where I'm like, a spreadsheet, cool, let's do it.
But it's got to be laid out, color coded. Like I can't handle a badly formatted spreadsheet.
Yeah,
That will make me crazy.
I just need to commit to learning how to use them. I've worked around it for decades. I'm like, I'm gonna do it one of these days. One of the things I love about how closely our teams work together is like it's so important, I think, for the consideration of the client in general and what you provide. Not only what you provide for content, but we were talking today. I was thinking in particular today, we were on a call with a client, and some of the metrics that you presented indicated kind of a shift in maybe how we use the budget that the client has given us to work with.
Yeah.
So it's so vital there too that our teams communicate, because should we now shift how or make a recommendation to the client that we shift the budget more toward a different type of content? Should we be doing fewer emails and more ad work? Or should we be doing more PPC ads and fewer Google, like fewer display ads? So I love that. I'm not good at getting the information, but I'm fascinated by the details that you dig up and that really spark our team into looking at, ooh, how can we do this differently? Ooh, that's a challenge. Okay, how are we going to address that? And so it's just a neat relationship between the two.
And synergy.
Yeah.
No, different word. New word. Cut that.
I'm going to bust out my thesaurus and we're going to call it something else.
Right. You know? I like that.
Yeah. No, it is a good word for it.
But yeah, it's very true. And I was thinking that when I was putting that report together that I've been working on for a while, and it's like looking at things, it's like, wait a minute, is this right? Like, like whenever I see something different, and we've been seeing this trend, like the report you were speaking of is a quarterly report.
Yeah.
And I've been noticing this trend over the last several months with numbers going a certain direction in a certain area. And I'm like, am I doing this wrong? Like sometimes when things start to shift.
Is this for real?
It's like, let's watch this. And that's sometimes too, you don't want to too quickly react to numbers.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, let's just let this play out for a little bit, but we're going to keep watching it. And as we discovered with that, like the end result, like the main thing that we're trying to produce, our deals for this client, was up. Even though some of these numbers were like, what is happening over here?
Yeah.
Like this isn't looking like it used to look.
Yeah.
But because there's so many different things that are happening, and like you said, another area is picking up where one is, but they're all important, but maybe we do need to reallocate, like, okay, maybe we just change a little bit how we're doing it. And it's all a big experiment. It really is.
That's what I love about
it's just a big experiment.
Advertising and marketing. It's like it's a very calculated experiment.
Right.
And
no one move is gonna do you in. And no one move's gonna probably make a huge, but it's just watching those trends and this little, hey, what if I do this again? What's gonna happen there? It's kind of an interesting little puzzle.
Now, watching you work, because your desk is right next to mine. And just hearing your process, how, like you were mentioning before, how you would latch on to a particular detail and then like just go down the rabbit hole on that. Do you feel like you have like an innate skill set that enables you to be really good at this? Because I feel like you have to have a certain kind of personality or just perspective or energy or something, because analytics are definitely not my thing. We're very different people. We are on opposite sides of the table.
Yep.
But so I feel like you must have some very particular skills to help you be really good at this.
The ability to hyperfocus when you get that thing and just be like, okay, I need this answer.
Yeah.
I got to dive down the rabbit hole for a minute.
But also knowing where to look, I think, is important. That's what sticks me up sometimes. Like I know I want to find a certain thing, but I'm like, I don't know where to start.
I've always kind of had a mind for numbers. Like they make sense to me. So that definitely is helpful if you're trying to look at numbers and see what they mean. You have to be able to understand that.
Yeah. Which is why I fail at
it. But you are amazing at so many things.
Thanks for making me feel better.
You're a little word wizard. So that definitely helps. And I feel like too, like I'm very fascinated at human behavior and psychology and things like that, which is kind of what marketing is you're speaking like, okay, this number is doing this. What's making them react that way?
Right.
Like, what did we say? Who are we talking to? And that piece of things, I find very interesting.
Yeah, because these numbers are basically behaviors.
Yes, it's a measurement of human behavior.
Yeah.
What information do you look for from those numbers to inform what you do?
I love seeing how well a blog does, how well an email does. Like you were talking about the subject lines and preview texts and stuff like that, and seeing where they clicked in. And there would be sometimes, that's actually what made me sit up and listen to the metrics part of these status calls when I was just starting out as a writer, was I want to see how well my article performs against last week's when this person wrote. Or, we had
little
different
competition
people. A little bit. I wanted to see, how did we do? If theirs was better. And it wasn't like,
no, but like what worked?
Right. I want to know, why did theirs perform better? And then I would do my own analysis. I do a little analytics too. I would look at, okay, so what did they include? Was it the style? Was it, because every writer here has a different style.
Right.
And so I would be like, is it their style? Did they connect more with the audience because of the tone, how they wrote? Was their wording was there more warmth? I mean, that ties into the tone. I'm just repeating myself. But the words they use, like, is it a certain... The words you use can either draw your audience in or kind of alienate them if you sound like you're too...
Yep.
You're using $10 words.
Right,
So
right.
I loved looking at those analytics and being like, wow, okay, why is this one so much better than that one? And using it to inform how I would write. So should I keep going the way I am? Like, have I really nailed that tone, or do I need to sharpen it up a little bit and change? And even just the perspective, like you were saying, how there were some phrases that really seemed to resonate with the audience that we were targeting. And so do we need to expound on that?
Right.
Or should we stay in this lane for a little while to really capitalize on that interest? Or so that part is fascinating to me too. Because I'm a big fan of human behavior too, but just on the opposite end of it.
Right.
But I love seeing the numbers now. Like now I'm so invested in them. I mean, I should be, because it's really, my job encompasses seeing everything as a whole that we do here. But before I was in this role, like that was what really started my fascination with what you do, and seeing that connection and being like, oh, this is great.
Yeah. Because so much of it is like so directly related to like like you said, like the style, the tone, things like that. One of the things I've noticed a lot in like the emails, we have multiple places where people can click in an email, and it's not always the big learn more call to action
Right.
button that gets the most clicks.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's the little piece within the text that's highlighted with a link, but it like speaks directly to a pain point, or it speaks directly to a person in a certain way. And it's been interesting to kind of see what tone, what statements are making people click.
Yeah, I love it.
And where in the article is it? Like,
Yeah.
is it at the beginning? They just clicked right away to move
Right.
on? Or did they read through and like,
How much
oh,
information does someone need before they're going to click?
yeah, like that stuff can be very, I mean, you can look at the same piece of content so many different ways as from a numbers perspective
Yeah.
and like pick it apart
Yeah.
so intensely if you want to. But just those little things, noticing those trends,
Yeah.
and what is speaking to people, and for different products too. Like what works in one product might not work for another, or in dealing with the insurance world, which is the account we're speaking of,
Yeah.
how you talk to someone about life insurance is different than how you talk to them about health insurance or disability
Exactly.
insurance. Like
Exactly.
different phrases connect to people when they're looking for that thing.
And I think the analytics helps the creative team understand their audience better. Actually, no, that's not quite what I want to say. I feel like the analytics really shows whether or not the creative team understands their audience. Because I think sometimes that can get lost when an agency or a client is so focused on the ROI and they just want fast returns from a campaign. They sometimes don't focus on the audience. They focus on what's the marketing that's going to get us the fastest return. Yeah, money's important, but seeing the analytics really clues you in on whether or not you're getting what your audience needs,
What they want.
what they feel, what they want. And if you're going to just throw something at them that's totally tone deaf and hope that it's going to make you money,
Right.
you're probably going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Because I think part of that on the creative side of things, like I love being able to have that information in numbers, like seeing how close did we get on this? How far off are we? How can we do better?
Yeah.
How can we speak to them better? How do we get them to understand that we get it?
Right.
And we can't do that unless we know what our metrics are,
Right.
unless we know what our analytics are.
Yeah. When you're looking at the numbers on a regular basis, it kind of gives you the freedom too to try something, but not worry like that one bad piece or whatever. One piece that doesn't.
One experiment.
One experiment isn't going to wreck things.
Right.
It could give you valuable information one way or the other.
Almost always does. Yeah.
And it actually,
100%.
sometimes you get more valuable information when things don't work, because then you know for a fact, okay, this is not how I speak to that group about this thing. That did not work well.
Yeah.
Okay, now we know. And we can, so you have to be willing to test it. But as long as you're watching that and you're not producing that same like piece that's not connecting
Right.
time and time again because you're not looking.
Right.
Like,
Right. You're not spending the time
right.
doing as much of a deep dive as maybe you should.
Right.
If you're kind of skipping that over just to pump stuff out and try to get something in front of your audience, then you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Exactly. And then if the trends are moving in a certain direction for what? Well, you got to listen to that too if you do need to make changes. So it's a ever evolving process.
Well, I'm glad that we have you as part of our process here because it's
I'm glad
great.
to be here.
It's great working with you, and
Yeah.
I feel like we've got a pretty good team here, and our clients seem to think so too because they're pretty happy with us.
I agree. Like, I look forward to like our monthly team calls that we have in different departments because everybody here works so well together, and that's so important.
Yeah.
That everyone, like, you have to have respect between the different departments.
And the work that each other is doing.
Yeah.
And understanding how your work, oh, wow.
Influences.
Exactly. Understanding.
How one department influences another department.
Exactly. How your department influences everybody else's.
Yeah.
And you can work a project together. It's just, it's great. It's
Yeah.
always great. Even when it's stressful, it's like we just get through it and we're always laughing.
Yeah.
So
and at the end,
great.
it's like, man,
Look at what we did.
Look at what we did. I've never been so happy to put together a 31 slide presentation in my life.
No kidding. We have had projects where we have worked for 3 months straight and not moved from our computers.
8-hour Zoom sessions.
Just to hammer out these slide decks and
that's
presentations,
all numbers
and it's all numbers and words and results and
that's actually a great example too of the two worlds needing to work together on that particular project, because it was like your department created everything, and then we had to look at how did everything do, what does all this mean, and then presenting it,
merging both of those
and
together.
like, okay, here's the numbers we're going to feature. Now we need the words. So like, it's just, it's a cool pairing of like right brain, left brain, kind of married together.
And then you just get this
fun.
whole perfect thing that and when you get solid results from
that's really fun.
And you get to present something to a client and you're like, look at what we did. Look at what happened, you know, for you this year or this month or this quarter. It's the coolest feeling. And it's like, this is why we do what we do.
It's fun.
Well, thank you for coming and talking with us today.
It's always a pleasure.
Will you do it again?
Yeah.
See, it wasn't so bad.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
It's not bad. And
I always love talking
thanks
to you.
for putting up with me as the interviewer, because Christy is 1,000 million times better at doing this. So
she's pretty good, but we're pretty good.
I'm the B-side.
But we've got a history of talking.
It's true. That's true.
Well before
we're
here.
Probably maxing out her space on our camera while we talk. We easily could.
Yes.
But you were great. So
thank you so much.
Till next time.